Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest installment of The Well. I am one of your hosts, Betsy Cardenas. I am the co founder of Born in June Creative. I am a writer, a mom, and an Angelino. We gave Joshua, our other co host, the week off today to work on some cool projects he has down the pipeline leading up to the election. But I'm in excellent company today. I'm here with Jennifer Lopez. She is the founder of Camila Creative. How are you, Jen?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? I'm excited for this. I've been excited about this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've been excited too. So tell us what Camila Creative is.
Oh man, Camila Creative is transforming right now. So Camila Creative has been a lot of things. Uh, I've launched my communications agency, which was what we focused on, PR and communications, for the past 5 years. And while we were navigating that space, it always kind of felt like there was something else that wasn't making the puzzle fit 100% the way that it needed to fit. Meaning like I like enjoyed it, but at the same time, like there was something missing when it came to that. And then slowly but surely, as we started working with incredible Latino business owners who, I mean, most of our good friends are super multifaceted and they have not only one career, not only one direction, and they started being a lot of our clients started having uh, requests to partner with brands, to be part of different commercials, to be part of different things like that. And slowly but surely, I think that really opened up a new world that I kind of had a feeling was there. And we found ourselves negotiating contracts for these opportunities that before didn't really exist in the way that they started existing. And then we've been doing that for the past 3 years, in addition to running PR campaigns and influencer campaigns for different brands. And really, COVID really gave us that nudge to like jump in full force and focus on the talent partnerships, talent management side of it, which, there's always like that little voice that's like, what are you doing here? Like, this isn't your place. But the more and more incredible opportunities that our clients have and that we're able to, champion them into, whether it's the negotiation part of it, whether it's the making sure that they are being represented in the way that they want to be represented, advocating for communities in the way that they want to advocate for communities. And that really has been such a passion driving behind our business. And so now we're just like, okay, this is the space we're in. And it feels very new, but at the same time, it's something we've been navigating for the past 3 years also.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's very significant about that is that a lot of people don't know this, but in general, in the past, when you talk about marketing budgets, a lot of the times they had multicultural budgets, which was like everyone who's not white in one bucket for some reason, as if we don't have differences amongst ourselves as Black people, Latinos, API communities. And then you had like the general standard white that everyone is very used to seeing. And so I think what's super significant about your work is that you are really changing that and saying, you know what, Latinos and people of color demand to make a certain amount of money that's equitable to the purchasing power that our community has. And I was laughing this morning. I sent you a message and I said, oh, Jay Balvin wants me to have a Big Mac because, McDonald's has now done these two partnerships, which, I mean, we won't argue about the merits of what they're actually doing. But the fact that, the first two people they chose was a Black man and a Latino man, I think that is significant because it shows us who is influencing culture and who is dominating culture and influencing what people are purchasing right now. And I think that speaks directly to the work that you do and how important it is that, if you are someone who has a platform of whatever sorts, you have worked hard to build that, and that's equity. And that is worth money. And I think that's what's super significant about the work that you do, because I think a lot of everything that's going on in the digital space, it's still very much the wild, wild west. Instagram just turned 10. But in terms of Instagram being, I know, right? It seems like it's been with us forever. I know some of us have spent years of our lives already on there. So I think that it's the wild, wild west in terms of brands can tell you, oh, hey, I'm going to send you $500 of pizza gift cards, and that's your payment for you using your platform to tell your followers about us. So I think that that's where kind of you come in and say, hey, you know what? Like, people should be compensated and people need to be compensated. So how did COVID, you mentioned how COVID opened up that space for you to dig into either intentionally or just because of the virtual was happening, people were spending much more time online. So talk to us about when COVID first hit and how that impacted you, and as much as you're comfortable sharing, and of where you see yourself and the business. How many months are we? 6 months into quarantine. I use it in quotes. Clearly not everyone's quarantining the way they're supposed to.
Yes. We've had conversations about that. I think for a long time, I've known that the PR space, as it was traditionally created, wasn't for me. And this was from, I worked for years in apparel PR, and we did so many different things, whether it was celebrity seeding, product seeding, which we would get like jeans on celebrities. We actually, and a lot of what we did was editorial, so getting clothing into magazines. This was really the beginning of designers, small brands, more than anything, mid to small brands being profiled on these media outlets. And so we were kind of like past the point where there was so much clothes in. I mean, I don't know if you remember People's Style Watch magazine. I think it was a big thing for us in college. Wow, I'm pretty much aging myself right now. We used to get, I don't know, 50 pieces of clothing into that magazine with the agency that I was working with. Slowly but surely, those amounts of editorial slots started dwindling. And it wasn't so much, I believe it had a lot to do with the need for real stories and the need for people to connect through real stories. As influencers started becoming, they were originally bloggers, right? They weren't known as influencers originally. Like, they just started putting up their websites, and we started dressing some of the, like, we put jeans on some of the like top influencers who are like working with Givenchy and Chanel and Versace and like everything. Now at that point, they were still accepting free products because all of these brands were not familiar with. And I think the biggest thing was seeing that, and really seeing like, oh, this world is changing. And at that point, I had no idea that my mind was working in that way, where like I knew there was more and there were more opportunities. I just, would bring up different ideas to old bosses, and to them, all of my ideas, which was more influencer work and was more like trying to find ways outside of the traditional to highlight these brands that we were working with, which at the time was a lot of fast fashion. And they were very, very much committed to their old traditional ways of PR. And I knocked on their door quite a few times until I realized like, they're not going to let me do this. So if I want to do this and I know that this is possible, I'm going to have to try to do this out on my own. And which is interesting, because like, I didn't really know what that meant. Like, I literally was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't I'm sure brands will want to work with me, and I'm sure I could get them, the stuff that we're working on them, not understanding the whole business side of things, but there was like a drive within me that was like, there's something different here. There's something more to what we are, to what I'm doing now. Gosh, I even just forgot your question. I feel like I'm rambling. Can you repeat that?
No, I think this is great, because I think that's ultimately what being an entrepreneur is, because I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and I think ultimately being an entrepreneur is about having a vision to see beyond what's in front of us.
Yeah.
So then I want to pivot then to ask you a question. What do you see COVID is going to bring down the pipeline for us? And I don't mean like, we're going to find a vaccine, but I mean, how is it impacting, digital work, influencer marketing? I know in the months leading up to COVID, there had been a lot of conversation online around, is influencer marketing dead? Like, what's it happening? Like, how is it evolving? So what do you see coming down the pipeline? Because one of the things that I have been focused on as a business owner, or I try to focus on, is like, what is the opportunity here? And like, what are some of the changes that were already in place, but that are being accelerated now because COVID is, number one, people are spending more time online. People are buying online more. You see this with the decline of traditional brick and mortar retail. Big box stores like JCPenney that we thought were institutions are crumbling. So that was a really long-winded way of saying, like, what do you see coming? What would you tell people is the opportunity here with COVID?
I mean, I think with any change to the status quo, because essentially that's what COVID has been, is also like, it also brings the air of possibility. I think that, we're very privileged to have that perspective in what we do. I don't necessarily think that everyone has that ability, right? And I think that we're at a point where there's just, if like everything is flipped upside down, everything is possible. So what was traditionally known as this is how things work, which is usually the barometer of like how, like, what someone's getting paid, how someone works, how someone's family schedule is scheduled, like whatever that looked like is now gonna be able to completely transform. For a lot of people, it's taken like a tough adjustment to figure out what working from home means. Not everyone has the additional support to be able to perform their work functions 100% at home. None of us were ready for the jolt. I miss people. I miss Gabby. But I do think that like COVID brings up that's not how we did things before, but like anything's possible at this point. So, if someone ever tells you like, this is how things work, it's like, well, like nothing, like, is that how things work? Because the world is different now.
So there's almost an opportunity to push back, or to, I guess the positive way of saying this is an opportunity to innovate right now in not just how we do business, how we operate our businesses, how people work or when they choose to work. And I think that's a really excellent point, but it does require some of that work that I know you and I have talked about, which is the mindset to get you there, right? Because you can't really see any kind of silver linings if you are panicking. And I know for us as a business, there was that initial readjustment, because obviously some opportunities were no longer available just because events couldn't happen as they were. So I think that we did have that initial period. So how do you feel about Camila now?
So I think backtracking kind of a little bit to that initial period, I mean, we were really focused on, a substantial amount of our monthly retainers were from PR clients. And so when COVID hit, one of the first levels of protection for any business is to reduce costs. And PR is definitely one of the first. And I will always advocate that like, if anything needs to go, that's the first thing that needs to go. And so we saw a decline, like maybe 75 to 80% in monthly income. And so the initial jolt was, did I mess up? Did I, like, what? And you know, you start to think of like how you created this situation that's a global pandemic, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it definitely puts you in a space where you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. Am I even equipped for any of this? And I think in the rush of making things work for whatever your needs are, you know, I was very fortunate and also is really scary to have payroll to take care of. And I, you know, that was a big driver of mine because I didn't want any of us to lose our health insurance. I didn't want to have to, you know, I knew that there's additional livelihoods, not just, you know, what the business, right? And so for me, it was very much like, how do we figure this out? Like, how do we make it work? Like, what are the things that are going to help us navigate outside of that? And I was fortunate that I kind of had that to pull me out of the like, oh man, woe is like me. I can't do anything else, and I'm just gonna kind of like let it ride until it completely implodes. So that pulled me out. And I think like when you, because I think the reality of being a business owner is that you kind of face that multiple times, not at this level, but we faced that multiple times throughout the past 5 years that we've been in business. So I was able to like pull some of that insight of like, hey, remember when we were 1 year in and you thought no one was going to hire you because no one trusted a company that just started, regardless of how much experience you had. And so it was a lot of like coaching myself into like, we can do this and like, we can figure this out. And, you know, leaning onto my friends. And I know we were on the phone quite a bit, and a lot of my other entrepreneurs, business owner friends, and we were able to kind of pull ourselves through whatever understanding relief packages. I didn't even know that was a thing when
it was so confusing.
Oh my gosh, it was so confusing. I didn't even know it existed. I have, you know, really fortunate to have some good friends that have gone through recessions with their business, and they were able to kind of pull me out and be like, hey, there's help if you need it. This is what you're able to do. This is how you're able to shift. There's certain taxes on payrolls that we were able to pause, and just kind of like all that information that no one that's a first generation business owner, that I consider myself now, like really understands. And I think that was like the really cool part of having a community, because I was able to have that information, and otherwise I wouldn't. Everyone knows entrepreneurship is a very lonely place without your community. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, I think we're still in that space where, yes, we are there's like certain things that maybe are obvious to people who have other business owners in their family or have a certain, I don't know, level of like support or information that is just it's just a natural part of their existence that some of us don't have. You know, even the idea of asking for help, which I think for immigrant families, sometimes there's a lot of pride in not receiving help. Yeah. But like, no, this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about a global episode is happening. And so if there's help being offered, this isn't the time to try to do it all on your own. This is a time to dig in and apply for grants and resources, and it's completely okay. I mean, even the mortgage relief that was being offered, I felt like, well, should I take that? Like, what does that mean? Like, when it's like, no, dude, they're offering you 6 months of you not paying your mortgage, and they'll add it on to the end because there's a recognition that something really major has happened. And as a business owner, a lot of our clients were also in hospitality or events, and that was one of the industries that was hit the most. So to your point, right? Like, we try to make it about ourselves. Like, oh, I should have totally had those, whatever ubiquitous 3 years of business expenses or whatever they tell you you're supposed to have. But the reality is, like, we're small businesses with a small profit margins on the back end. We're not an epic corporation. And that's why it was funny to see that even these corporations were taking money. Like, they were the first ones to sign up to get money.
They're in so much debt. Well, and I think that has been like a huge, like, a huge game changer for me, understanding like what that actually means, because I grew up with my dad being like, save, 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 like, don't get into debt. Like,
that's true.
Don't get into debt. Credit cards are not great. And, like, that caused me to get into a lot of credit card debt because I didn't know any better. And I was able to pull myself out of that and buy a house, and then COVID hits. So in my mind, I have like all these different ideas of what debt is and how negatively impacted. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing that these corporations have so much debt. I just read an article in I want to say it's like the New York Magazine, about this gentrification and this like yoga business owner, and one of them was a contractor. I have to send it to you, but it basically talked about how much debt they would get into to purchase these buildings, and refinancing and like purchasing buildings to turn them into yoga studios. And they're caught up because apparently they're trying to like kick their tenants out now, and like they're supposed to be like super holistic and yogi. But it was just another reminder of how a lot of business people that are not focused on supporting communities are taking out all this debt, and that's how they're running their businesses. And there's a lot more to that, but everyone else is looked down upon for taking out debt, yet these people are able to be, so there's that discrepancy there.
If you're an immigrant and you took support from the government in the form of healthcare, for example, that is seen as shameful. But if you're someone who has a high-powered accountant who is helping you get deductions on your haircuts and everything else, that's considered good business, right? Without mentioning any names. Right. So I think that as first-generation Americans and first-generation business owners, we exist always in the middle of this dichotomy between what we were raised in and what we are seeing as the reality of business owners. And so I think that first of all, it's great that we have each other to talk ourselves through and say, hey, it's okay. Like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together, because that community is important. Because I think one of the things I'm trying to overcome is like, well, this is your fault because you should have a real job. This is your fault because you don't want to work 9 to 5 for another person. Right. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just like I always tell myself at this point, I'm unemployable because I've been on my own for so long. It's almost like living with your parents and then trying to go back and live with them, but like under their rules in a way. Yeah. And it's just like, it's really difficult. Right. Yeah. So I think, so I know I'm trying to keep these short, and I know I said that, but now we're going on, so it's fine. But I want to ask you 2 pieces of advice for people who are in a place where they're promoting a business or a cause. What are the 2 most common mistakes you see people making? Because I know not everybody can afford to have a PR person or a talent manager like yourself. What are the top 2 mistakes? People usually ask, what are the 2 things you should do? I'm going to ask you the 2 top mistakes you see people making when they're promoting themselves online or their business. She's thinking about it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the two of the biggest mistakes that I see people take. We're talking small business owners. Is that what?
Yeah, like if I'm starting out and I know I don't have budget yet for epic marketing or for a PR person or a talent manager if I'm an influencer and I'm reaching the 10,000 mark as a micro influencer. What are the top two mistakes you see people making?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is to just get started. I think a lot of the times people think that they need to reach this level of perfection with their imagery, perfection with their content, to get going with whatever business they want to own. So I think like really just kind of putting yourself out there. I think that, you know, when we first started, I am a big supporter of getting your branding on point and making it beautiful. But if that's gonna limit your, if that's gonna like stop you from putting your work out there to begin with, then like just get it out there the way that you have it and you see it and connect with people. And the goal is to share what you're doing with the world. So choosing whatever platform that you feel most of the connection to. And I think as you grow, you'll start seeing like what that actually means for you, whether it's like veering more towards, you know, a social media, retail sales, or whether that means, which I think is like huge, or just focusing on your website and doing
E-commerce?
E-commerce there. Yeah. And so I think that just like really getting it out there. I mean, I think our, you know, street vending community are like basically like our perfect examples of business owners that just find a way, and, you know, it's out of necessity. And, you know, they post up, and that's, you know, they're doing what they need to do to get their stuff out there. And I think that the less we focus on what people have to say about us, as long as we know we're providing value, then I think that is a huge part of getting out there and getting started. So I think really not choosing to wait, choosing to move forward. If especially, I mean, if there are any, if what the business is something that creates a solution to a problem, especially right now during COVID time, whether it's creating community, whether it's, you know, empowering business owners, whether it is really sometimes just peaceful content that can, you know, I think like, I don't know if you ever scroll past the, whether it's those meditation app advertisements, and it's like, this is your 15 minutes of Zen or 15 seconds of Zen.
Yeah.
And it's like it just, if someone focuses on peaceful content, like I'm pretty sure they're going to do really well right now, because everyone is looking for that outlet to really just kind of like take a second and take a deep breath. So really, if they're solving any problems, to jump into it. On that same note, keeping your costs as low as possible during this time. You know, I'm a big advocate of paying people for what they're worth. That said, in order to do that, sometimes you need to keep your marketing costs lower. Sometimes you do need to keep certain additional costs lower, a smaller team than you would normally invest in during, and I guess it does go case by case, because there's businesses that are thriving right now. They're, you know, like I think a lot of the times we think like, oh, it's a pandemic, everyone is struggling, but I think that like there are definitely a lot of businesses, you know, like trillionaires and whatnot, that are doing really well right now. So
I mean, the creators of I mean, Zoom, that stock has gone up so high,
yeah,
because now everyone is relying on that kind of technology. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it comes down to understand your finances, understand your industry, and understand, where and when you should keep your costs low.
Yeah.
And don't be I read industry analytics, not necessarily because I'm a huge investor, but because I like to know what the trends are and kind of what's coming down the pipeline, right? And then I think in instances like this, like cash is king. Like I've been sharing on my Instagram that I had started doing the system where every time we get a check or a commission or a client pays an account, I put away 20% for taxes because we have to pay.
We do pay those.
Mhm. Yeah, we do pay those. Yeah. Yeah. And then 10% for emergency funds and like 1 to 2% for like a vacation, which is how I've been able to like still take a little bit of time off, and then have that saving, and that really helped. And that's something that we should always be doing, because I know that 2020 has showed us how unpredictable everything is, but really it's always been this unpredictable. It's just a bunch of stuff hit the fan at the same time in one year that also happened to be an election year. So it just feels like everything is up and down. But the reality is, like, to your point, a lot of us who have been in business for a few years, we know that these ups and downs are just a general part of life. So welcome to everybody else. We have been on this train for a while. Not minimizing anyone's pain, and obviously like healthcare issues, that's why, I love that you mentioned that, like, it's paying people that work for you, and also feeling responsible for their healthcare benefits and not wanting to lose that, because unfortunately we're living in a country where your healthcare benefits are tied to your employment, which totally shouldn't be like that. But I love that you noted that as business owners and employers, we also have a responsibility, and then try to do the best that we can to maintain that for people once we're able to provide it for them.
Yeah.
So it's Hispanic Heritage Month, or Latinx Heritage Month. What are you calling it? What do you call it?
I'm calling it Everyone's Hispanic Month.
You're calling it Welcome to My Life. It's always Latinx Heritage Month at Camila Creative.
I think we're always celebrating. A lot of the people we work with are always celebrating culture. And it's really nice to see brands that would not typically be choosing to invest in our community to do so. And, really the ones that are empowering the talent they're working with to make it their own and really share who they are and not pigeonhole them to some stereotype is also like huge this year, which has been really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think that's another cool part of your work that maybe isn't seen, is that you're also advocating for Latinos to be represented in a way they want to be represented, not necessarily being told, like, so you're going to put on this hat and then you're going to like shake the maracas or whatever it is that, like the Ricky Ricardo type stereotypes that we have so often been tethered to. And not all brands are doing it well yet, but I think people like you play an important role behind the scenes in saying, listen, like, you're not going to get my top tier client to do some kind of nonsense that makes no sense and that isn't true to who they are. So we are donating to organizations every month for Latinx Heritage Month. So tell us about the organization you chose and why you chose it.
Yes, the East LA Women's Center. I came across them through actually a work project, as I tend to come across everything in my life. And their story really impacted me because they were the first bilingual suicide hotline. And I might have totally butchered that part, but they were the first bilingual hotline available to the Latino community in Southern California. And I think that, like, understanding that, yes, a lot of us are bilingual. A lot of, back when they first started, just like a lot of our parents, they do just, they don't straddle both languages, and they need that support. And I think that, I feel like if that support is so necessary now, I can only imagine how it was back then when they first started. So I just really hearing their stories and how they're impacting the community. And they have a rapid response fund right now for COVID to support the community, which I mean, I can only imagine how much help is needed during a time where, you know, people are going through such difficult things, whether it's employment or
Yeah.
yeah,
Health
just
issues.
yeah, stress, personal stress, and all the stuff. And so yeah, they really, when we were having this conversation, they were the first ones to come to mind.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you can we'll do a post for the audience. We'll do a post about them on our Instagram at Born in June Creative. And then if you want to check them out, their Instagram handle is at ELAWC. And as Jen noted, they work on sexual assault, domestic violence, HIV, human trafficking prevention. And their official tagline says the first Spanish bilingual crisis hotline, which is exactly what you said. Super significant right now, especially when you talk about teens and kids not being in schools. There is oftentimes schools are the first, I would say, point of contact where issues of domestic violence or abuse are reported. And now we don't have that lifeline for children and families. So this work is always important, but extra support is always needed. To your point, Jen, when people are stressed out of work, running low on money, or just being home a lot with an abuser, it can put people in additional danger. So I love that you selected this organization and were able to highlight their work. So Born in June Creative is going to make a $100 donation in Jen and Camila's name. Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate you taking your busy time. I know this is like an extra busy time for you because all your clients are busy working on Hispanic Heritage Month projects. So I really appreciate you and I appreciate your time. And thank you so much for being on The Well with us today.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. So where can we follow you?
You can follow me at Camila Creative on Instagram and at Jen with 3 N's Lopez on my personal Instagram.
My favorite thing about being Jen's friend, aside from being her friend, is that when she texts or calls me, it says Jennifer Lopez. And so there is a small part of me that always thinks, is it the Jennifer Lopez?
Might be.
All right. We'll talk soon, Jen. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.